Hey, I'm Dave Wish with Music Will, and I am a CGO.
Always saying guitars are playing a part of who we are. Got a cool job, but there's so much more to the chairmen and women of the pedal board. You're a CGO, Chief Guitar Officer.
The show where success meets guitar.
Welcome to Chief Guitar Officer. I'm Scott Haidt.
And I'm Judd Silver. Scott, I know that music education is extremely important.
It really is. I grew up around public education and I had music there, and it was a huge impact on me and what I spent a lot of time in my career doing. And I still do it. I'm very involved with my PTSA in the middle school, and I'm DJing concerts and I'm doing things with the kids' concerts. It is such a huge part, I think, of a great education for kids.
Yeah, so many schools around the country, around the world, and they've taken programs out of schools. So it's very hard to find something in schools now that educates kids in music. Today, we're going to talk to somebody that's doing it probably at the very, very highest level.
He started as a first grade teacher. Back in the day, he brought his guitar to school because he's a guitar player, and he played the guitar for the kids, and they all lit up and thought it was just the coolest thing. That moment has now turned into a lifetime of teaching children.
And built this organization that's really incredible, really powerful, reaching a lot of people. Also bringing in very, very well-known, successful, rock stars, very well-known musicians to become involved, to help educate the kids, get them excited. And I think that these musicians are getting a lot out of it too. He's now an inventor, coming up with new ideas to continually get kids excited about learning music. Scott, tell us who our guest is today.
Really excited to welcome the founder of Music Will, the one and only Dave Wish. And guess what? He's a CGO.
Champion of music education, force of musical nature, believer that there is music in all of us. CGO Dave Wish, welcome to Chief Guitar Officer.
Thank you, Judd and Scott. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to see you, Dave. Dave, what do you have going on today?
Today, I'm on vacation in Cape Cod with my family.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So this is my happy spot. I like to get up and see the sunrise. And every morning I go with my boogie board and my ukulele, and I just play till the sun rises until till my family wakes up.
Fantastic.
All right. So we see you wearing the shirt. What is Music Will?
Sure. Well, Music Will is a national nonprofit that has brought the free gift of music and teaching to over 1.7 million school kids across the United States over the last 22 years. And our mission is to transform lives by transforming music education, making it more democratic, more inclusive, and more representative of the kids it serves. But the origin story is that I was working as a first grade school teacher in a school that had no music program out in California. And I'm also a guitar player, so that bothered me. And I decided, well, I could start a guitar class for my first graders, and how fun would that be? And it turns out it was a huge amount of fun. And I started teaching kids to play the music that they knew and loved. All my kids were bilingual students, many of them immigrants from Mexico. So they were into Selena and Ricky Martin and the Backstreet Boys and Santana. I had heard of the last guy, but the other folks had to learn their music. And I just started teaching kids the way that I had learned with my friends, in a very informal way, and in a way that where all the focus was on, Dave, what do you want to play? Really? You'll teach me whatever I want to play? Well, I want to play the Grateful Dead. I want to play Jimi Hendrix. I want to play Bob Marley. No holds barred. And so I did the same thing with the kids, and it was great. Within a couple of weeks, they were able to play basic chords. They started writing their own songs, which one does when you have that freedom. And I started selling CDs of the kids' original music because all the other kids in my school wanted to be part of my music class. So I had a class for my second grade students, the third or fourth graders, etc. And those CDs started attracting a lot of attention. In fact, actually, Carlos Santana got involved. He gave us a ton of electric guitars and Bonnie Raitt and John Lee Hooker. These were all local artists. So in 2002, I decided to leave the classroom and train teachers to do what I was doing, because I realized that by training teachers, I could reach a lot more kids. So since that time, we've trained over, and so the way that our program works is we find school teachers, we train them in how to run a music will class, which focuses again on just very student-centered, sort of student-led almost, and focuses on popular music styles like rock, rap, pop, Latin, R&B. And our teachers get 4 things from us. I like to call them the 4 C's: training or certification. They get our curriculum. We've created a bunch of that. We give them classroom instruments: guitars, bass, drums, keyboards, etc., ukuleles, computer stuff. And we put them together in community. We have community events for them. So in that way, we've served over 5,000 schools and over 1.7 million students since 2002. And right now, we're at the beginning of our 3rd strategic plan. And our goal actually is very audacious. We want to be able to reach 10 million kids within 5 years. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to double the size of our current program, which will bring us to over 1 million kids consecutively. But also we have a college program where we're teaching college music education majors, before they even get in the classroom, how to run our program. We're already in 100 colleges and universities, so our goal is really to dive into that and get a certification program going at the college level. And if we're clever and a little lucky, in 10 years, in 5 years, by 2030, we think that we can impact the lives of 10 million young people across the United States.
Incredible.
Really admirable. So really meeting them where they are.
Yeah, and I like to say everybody's musical, and the talented music teacher can just sort of draw the music out. You don't have to drum anything in. You don't have to teach kids to love music. I mean,
you mentioned being an educator. I'm interested to know whether you had this kind of like planted way back in the back of your mind, being an educator, being a teacher. Was it always the goal for music to come out of it? Or did you just like start out purely wanting to teach kids and that was it?
Well, yeah, it's like Bugs Bunny said, I must have taken a left turn at Albuquerque, where am I? So first, the fact that I became a 1st grade school teacher is funny because, of course, I took it for 2 years as a kid. Showed the other guys how it worked. And then I taught it for 10 years. So I think if my 1st grade teachers could know, wait, that guy become a 1st grade school teacher? I struggled in school, and music class was no different. I didn't really like the music classes I was given. It wasn't like I felt I was too cool or whatever, but I was like dyslexic. I couldn't read the notes. It wasn't really music for me. It didn't feel like it. So I quit every music program that they ever put in front of me. And it wasn't until I hit high school, my dear friend Paul Brill, wonderful songwriter, he does all kinds of soundtracks and stuff. He could play guitar. And I was like, wait a minute, if Paul can play guitar, then he could probably teach me. And that's exactly what he did. Just showed me a couple of basic chords. And the next thing I knew, I was playing, the music that I loved. And that was it. That's all it took. I was hooked. It's not an unfamiliar story. I learned to play a few chords and poof, oh my God. Or someone showed me a pentatonic scale, bang, my brain blew up in a good way. And so I kind of fell into teaching because I was young and I liked working with kids. I'm bilingual. There was a job at a school. But from the minute I hit the 1st grade classroom, I was like, wow, I love this gig. And I wanted to make my 1st grade classroom everything that my own educational experience hadn't been. Like, I've always felt a little bit like school wasn't for me. I wanted all my kids to be like, no, this place is 100% about and for you. That's the only reason any of us are here, because you're that important. And then I would bring my guitar to school just to play, and always the kids wanted to touch it. They wanted to hold it. I did this thing where I would, I would greet the kids at the door, and I would play a chord, and they would strum a chord, and we'd high five. And then one day it occurred to me, like, I should just teach them. Why don't I? And I begged and borrowed a bunch of guitars. So from my musician friends who owed me money or favors, usually both, I was like, hey man, I know you've got that beater Yamaha under your bed.
Right.
Or remember that gig I took and blah, blah, blah. So, and then once we started selling those CDs, I could buy more and more instruments from more and more classrooms. So I never would have dreamed that I would be running a music. First of all, I'd be a first grade school teacher. And it was also very weird that I'm running a music program in school, and the irony isn't lost. I mean, Music Will has grown to become the largest nonprofit music program in the United States today.
Judd and I have actually had the pleasure of being at one of your events a few years ago. It had some, major artists. There was Chief Trick there, and Joan Jett was there, and I think Darlene Love was being honored. I mean, it was a big deal. What is the inner workings of having that happen?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we're a very grassroots organization, started by a former first grade school teacher. And our initial work with artists, they just discovered us because they would hear the first graders' original music on the local radio station. They'd be like, "What? I'm just a little dinosaur." Would be playing on basically the big K-Fog, started playing my kids' songs. And then it really became something. So Carlos Santana has been involved for years. So has Bonnie Raitt. John Lee Hooker was, may he rest in peace and power until his passing. And then how the music world is. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone's kind of, I mean, the real world is that way too. It's just sometimes we don't see it. We don't understand how connected we really are and how much we belong to each other. And I think that for us to work with popular music artists is sort of a no-brainer all around because they know what that feels like. They're like, "Oh, I remember when I was the little kid looking at this bass player or that singer or that guitar player or that band." And I was just like, they seemed like magicians to me. And now I get to do it and I'm living this life. And there's one of my favorite things. I mean, so you've been to our benefit event. We've had all kinds of people from James Hetfield from Metallica and Smokey Robinson and some of the folks you mentioned, lots of people. I like it even better when they go into a classroom because it's like, okay, wait a minute, Slash is playing, whatever song with a bunch of 8th graders in Los Angeles, or Ziggy Marley is doing One Love with some kids in, Alameda. It's just like, there's just something really beautiful about it. And that's one of the other things I feel is that, playing music is like speaking a language, and it's sort of like, oh, you speak this language? Hey, let's have a conversation. It becomes very natural. And I've just seen so many beautiful interactions where the artists themselves, I sometimes feel get as much or more out of it than the kids. Because, sometimes the kids are like, who is?
I think one of the most beautiful things about what you do is the idea of, at its core, is a great idea, and it's giving back and it's helping these kids with music. The idea that it's then amplified by people who've done so well in music. I mean, everyone becomes really one thing.
Thank you so much. Well, that music brings people together in ways that, other things just can't.
You recognize that you mentioned being a guitar player early on. I mean, you're seeing it firsthand through all these examples through Music Will. Can you take us back to the earliest memory you have of when you recognized it for yourself, the power of the guitar where it first hit you?
Well, my parents listened to, I never had a period of separation from my parents' music. They started playing their records, and I just remember as early on, that was like my library. That was like my church. That was like my temple, was my parents' record collection. And it was Little Richard, and it was Chuck Berry, and it was Elvis Presley. And my father could play a little bit. So I don't really have early memories specifically of guitar. My earliest memories of music were screaming. And the screams that I remember were, womp, bom, a loo bop, womp, bam, boom. And I was like, what is that? And then, or Paul McCartney screaming on that transition in Hey Jude, better, better.
Right.
And just like, whoa, was my mind blown. And I was like, whatever this is, I want tons more of this.
Yes.
And so I will say that I spent most of my childhood jumping up and down in front of the mirror in my room, holding a tennis racket or a paddle from a canoe, dreaming that I could play guitar. But there was no guitar program in my school. So that had to wait until, I was, like I mentioned, a senior in high school. My friend Paul showed me how to play. That feeling of like, you could put one of those records on and just be in a completely different place. Or you could think of that song and just be transported. That's never changed.
Well, since you probably don't have your head tennis racket that you used in front of the mirror back in 19X, maybe you could share another instrument you have with us. I know you're away on vacations.
I travel always with a lot of ukuleles, and one of my favorite, I think of it as like a crossword puzzle. Like, I like doing chord melody arrangements on the ukulele, like songs that you'd be like, wait, that's weird. Like, why would you do that song on the ukulele? I was like, well, that's perfect. I think I got the idea, George Harrison, like,
all right, enough. We're going to have to pay some royalties out here. We got to.
But yeah, so I like to go to the beach and just, try out different, chord melody arrangements.
Yeah, it definitely translates. I've heard stories like, I think Tom Petty talking about George Harrison, like driving around in his car with a trunk full of ukuleles.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's easier to bring than the guitar, And then I also, Judd, you've seen this. I've invented a new musical instrument, which I bring with me everywhere.
Yes.
And I'll show it to you here. It looks like a compost bucket. I know. But when you...
but describe what that is, because it's really cool.
Well, what it is, I'll show you here. I set this up. Everything that you see here, including this drum, fits inside of this bucket. And this is a 5-piece drum set.
Can you describe what the elements are, the components of that, almost like medical screens?
So yeah, I used to make them out of X-ray film because that's what drum heads are made out of, mylar. So they're all the same size. You tune them by twisting these knobs that loosens and tightens the membrane. So this is a low tom. This is a high tom. And then the snare, which is right here, just has snare wire underneath.
And it travels all in that case.
Everything travels in this case, and we're going to begin selling these things starting in 2025. And the proceeds from the sale, I'm the inventor, the proceeds from the sale of this will benefit Music Will. So we're hoping to do sort of like a Tom Shug kind of thing where you buy one of these for yourself, and we can put one in the school. It brings drumming where drumming dare not go. And I invented it so that we could teach 20 or 30 kids at a time how to play the drum set. And I was like, how could you do that? Drums are too big, they're too loud, they're too expensive. And, and I was like, well, what if there was a kit that wasn't too loud, that wasn't too big, and wasn't too expensive? So I looked around, there wasn't one. And necessity is the mother of all invention. So I got out the crazy glue and the rubber bands and the saws. And yeah, so we're really excited about it. And it's great. Although it looks kind of like a toy, in no way, shape, or form is it a toy.
And the whole thing folds up, fits into that bin, yeah? It all folds up and you pick it all up in one piece.
I wish I had this when I was a kid.
And you sell them direct?
It'll be direct from our website, but it'll also be available at major music stores all around the country. Actually, all music stores around the country. And even abroad. It'll be sold in, I think, 31 countries. And all the proceeds from our portion of that will help us bring more music to more kids. And yeah, I'm very excited about it. And some of our artist friends, they are genuinely blown away by this. Warren Haynes is traveling with one on his tour bus. James Hetfield, little known fact, is also a drummer.
I think you might have to ask James to have a drum off, let Lars use his big kit, and he plays that on stage. And there you go. There's the promotion right there.
I like that. That's a good idea.
And what is the website where people can go and look at it? And all things Music Will, how do people find you?
musicwill.org is our primary website, so you'll be able to find that stuff. But we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on all of the social media channels. But the best place to go is probably the website. If you sign up for our newsletter, boy, we're going to be making a big announcement.
Dave, I am so inspired by all the things you've done.
Well, I'm very happy. In my fantasy world, I am Willy Wonka. You know, that like the Gene Wilder version. And I always wanted to I was like, wow, what a cool job. His whole job is to sit around and think about things that would make kids happy and then make them. So in my life, I've had the pleasure of doing that with Music Will. I've had I'm now working on different musical instruments. You know, this is one. I've got some other things, you know, topper secret for now. They'll be coming out. And I'm also really lucky that I've recently been joined by a new CEO at Music Will. I'm the founder. But I'm currently, my position is founder and chief vision officer. And Mike Wasserman has joined us. He's the person I passed the torch to, who's our new CEO of Music Will, because I want this mission and I want this organization to outlive me and outlast me and be a lasting agent of social change in the United States and hopefully abroad. You know, we do have some programs overseas, and that's one of the other things that we're beginning to look into.
Well, thank you for doing everything that you're doing, and thank you for being an excellent guest. We really appreciate
Amazing
it.
Guest.
Thanks for having me. Such a pleasure. Thanks to you both.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Check us out on all the socials at Chief Guitar Officer.
And we want you on the show. Go to chiefguitarofficer.com, look for the section called You're a CGO, send us your video, and be featured on a future episode. Just like this.
I'm David Ross, owner of David Ross Musical Instruments. I'm a guitar repairman and guitar pedal manufacturer here in Binghamton, New York. This is my Gibson Les Paul Standard, and I'm a CGO.